My story today is called Owl Moon. I like this story for a couple reasons. It's actually one of my favorite stories, but I like it because it's about I think it might be a daughter. I thought it was a son for a long time. It's a daughter that gets to go owling with her dad, and it's a special privilege that she had to kind of earn, and she had to be old enough to do. So I always think those are pretty special in families. Do you have a privilege that you look forward to being old enough to do, or maybe you already are old enough now and you get to do it a special thing? So I like it for that reason. I also like it because it makes me feel calm. It's sometimes this winter scenes like this make me feel calm. Anyway, the story is called Owl Moon. I'm going to move this down here so I can look straight at you guys. Oh, come on. Come on. No. Oh, fine. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. Oh, I can see the train. It's right here. See the smoke? We talked about plumes the other day. It's a plume of smoke above the train. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out, trains and dogs, for a real long time, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward the woods, Pa and I. So it looks like it's daytime, but it's really nighttime. The moon is just so bright. So you know an owl moon is just a really bright moon, right? Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up, as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Woo, woo, woo, woo," the sound of a great horned owl. Woo, 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 woo. Again he called out, and then again. After each call he was silent, and for a moment we both listened. But there was no answer. Pa shrugged and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hid behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand. At the sound, I put my mittens over the scarf over my mouth and listened hard. And then Pa called, "Woo, woo, woo, woo." I listened and looked so hard my ears hurt and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. Woo, 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 woo. Pa almost smiled. Then he called back, "Woo, woo, woo, woo," just as if he and the owl were talking about supper, or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer, from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without a sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud, but I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. What'd you guys think? Did you like that story as much as I did? I was looking for the story that I read yesterday. Here it is. So we talk a lot about author's purpose. So yesterday we read about the pout-pout fish and how it cleaned up the ocean. And this author, Deborah Dyson, she really wanted to persuade us, right? To persuade us to think about our use of plastic and what we do with that plastic that we use. Do we throw it in the garbage where it belongs, or do we just throw it on the beach or the side of the road, right? So this author wrote a persuasive story. This author here, I feel like there was multiple purposes for this. First of all, I learned a lot about owling, right? About how you do it. I also feel like I was entertained. I was in suspense to see if they were going to find an owl or if it was going to be one of those times that they didn't find one. But I also felt a little persuaded. And what I mean by that is I just, like I said, I feel kind of calm when I read it. And it kind of, it changes my mood. And I think sometimes authors are really good about that, about changing your mood around. Maybe it makes you quiet or excited or sad or happy. So authors are really powerful that way. They can really do a lot with their words.